Okay, now we got a rifle. It ain't quite shooting the way we want to. So we got to think about what we're going to do to straighten this all out. This video I'm going to call Design Flaws. Because what most people forget is this is a military gun, and the 91 part of 9130 stands for it's the model of 1891. That is when they first made guns in the smokeless powder type. And from the original 91 version, the modifications basically were they shortened the barrel a little and changed these sights, because the older sights were calibrated for a different type of ammunition and they were considered obsolete. And I've got a 91, they're kind of weird, so we'll stick with these, stick with what we got, the more modernized version. Also at ease production, that front sight post thing is a lot easier to modify and change than the old blade sights, and easier to manufacture. So you got an old design. The trigger magazine system, it's got a military trigger which is designed to have creep and that in there. They're not designed like civilian triggers. I have seen these guns modified for civilian use in Eastern Europe. They'll have set triggers. They change the whole thing. They machine the gun, change it all around, and they only use the M44 versions. And the reason is, so our trigger is pretty crappy. We got a magazine system using a rim cartridge, which is an old obsolete style, compared to the Mauser rimless or semi-rimmed, where you can use a different magazine. You got to have an interrupter on this so the rim cartridges don't lock up the mag. And also, the one thing about this gun which makes it difficult to accurize and sporterize is the way it kind of goes in the stock. And this has a very thin, long barrel. And I believe this gun, the stock has a part in holding it up in here, has to kind of grip the barrel and hold it. Now when we think of modern guns like a Mauser or a gun with a stout barrel, you think of free floating the barrel for accuracy, and the reason you do that is so the wood doesn't touch the barrel anywhere. And when you fire the gun and the barrel heats up a bit, if it's touching any high spots on the stock, it'll push the barrel and the site of impact off. So that's why everyone says free float the barrels. But unfortunately, the way this gun's designed, I don't think that's going to work. So we have to come up with another solution to that problem. And also there's just the fit of the wood. Okay, I don't know if these stocks, if you look, there's all these gaps. It looks like a gap in the back here, but it looks like it's made to where it kind of wedges in. Here, it's touching. Also, that's a 3000 shim in there. It's totally free floating under the chamber, but yet touches up higher up in here where the barrel is. So that can create an accuracy problem. And not only that, if the action fits loose in the stock, when you fire it, the action will shift around. If you looked at, it's not a very close wood to metal finish there. So if your action's loose and you fire it, it's going to move where it is in the stock and probably throw your point of impact off. So basically, we'll take a look at this. And the two things I'm going to do to get over these inherent flaws or whatever, to correct this, it's simple, is we're going to try to shim the action to lock it into the stock better, draw up any play. And then we have to figure out a way to get this to where, if you look here, while we got it up, there's play in this. You can feel it when it moves. Okay, there's movement here between this and the, when you hold on to it and move, the barrel will move up and down, which, you know, is, I think it should be gripped tighter where there's no movement. I don't know if you can see it, but I can feel it. There's movement. So this is loose inside here. It's basically rattling around. Every time you fire it, this barrel is going to whip around inside this portion of the stock here. So, you know, it's long, you got vibrations, you got your barrel moving and jumping about. So I think that has a lot to do with it. So let's take the handguard off, take a look, and then we'll take the action apart and look at how it fits there in the wood. And I got some ideas, and I might try them out here, and we'll go over them once we get a look at the inside of this. Okay, we'll remove the handguard, and like I said, you see the barrel comes off from here where it's thick over the chamber, sights on there, and then it's just a narrow, thin, wispy barrel all the way to the end, you know, where a Mauser barrel is stepped. It's thick here, thicker, then, you know, it's gradually stepped, which makes for a stouter barrel. And modern barrels are pretty much tapered, being thick towards the chamber area and tapering out. That you can free float. And, you know, you don't want it touching the wood to affect point of aim in that or accuracy. But unfortunately, the way these are, now if you put a sporter stock on here that comes up to here, then you got this long, narrow barrel like wobbling every time you shoot it. Even if you cut it down, like I said, it's not stepped. So, I see my asshole neighbor's got to start with the lawn mowing again. Hold on a minute. Like I said, the long, thin barrel is problematic. Now this one's shooting low, and from what I've gotten measurements of that front sight post in there, I measured it and it's already been filed on. It's lower than normal. I've checked it against some of my others. So I don't know if the barrel's bent or what, or if it's just the way this thing's sitting in this stock. So I'm going to try to change that. And like I said, it's loose. Okay, now another tricky thing, I got some of these guns that this is warped, and when you take them rings and handguard off, this will actually drop down. This whole front end. I have one it drops right away from the gun when the handguard rings are off. It's actually warped downwards. So I think what we're going to have to do is devise something or come up with a method to where when you clamp this or put this handguard back on, we have pressure. We're more or less going to grip it just like my hand and hold this steady. And this is going to affect the barrel resonance and everything else. Also, we're going to have to do, I'll get this action out, we're going to have to try to tighten up this action into the gun itself. Because I've noticed that when I let this sit for a while, I come up here and these screws are very loose. But let me get the action apart and we'll take a look at it. Okay, we'll start with, we got the screws out, we're going to take the trigger guard out. Now it does kind of fit in there tightly, even though, you know, the outside it doesn't look like it's inletted well. And if you notice, somebody already has put some sort of metal shim in there. And what the shim does is when you shim the stock, the wood, you get compression from the wood. The wood's soft. So when you screw it down, put your two screws in, it'll actually compress the wood and it'll be loose in there. What you want is when you bolt this down, you want it tight. You want it to hold this action tight, steady, and you want to take all the play and movement out. So what they used to do is shim it. A lot of the finished guns are shimmed. I found it in there. And that's one way of tightening up the action without glass bedding or getting real fancy or carving up all the wood. It's a simple way of doing it. So let's flip this around up here. And we'll take a look at it here. And we'll get the barrel out. And like I said, the barrel, as you see, got the thick chamber area, and it's just thin all the way up. And if you put that in the sporter stock, you got this long ass thin pencil-like barrel hanging out that's going to wobble all over. Now this part of the receiver here fits into that notch there. And I guess you got what you call a recoil lug there. So that way, you can see the half of the metal. It's metal against metal. So it isn't slamming up against the wood every time you fire it and cracking the stock. Here's where it's inletted for our chamber area, which is basically free floating. That's a little, when you put your cleaning rod in, that's what it screws into. And there's our barrel channel, which, as we've seen, is loose. It's loose in there. And there's your back action. Now I think the receiver itself wedges against the side, even though it doesn't quite come up close. It's kind of inletted wide. But see, something like this, to glass bed it, you got your interrupter mechanism here on the side, and a lot of parts and pieces that got to move around. So glass bedding this like you would a modern gun is kind of another problematic thing. So what I propose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make some shims, shim this stock up. I'm not going to dress up like a Czechoslovakian forest ranger and show you how to pound stripper clips into shims, but we're going to shim the stock up at 4 points. And we're going to try, I think I'm going to, one technique that's used is cork. I'm going to try to bed this with cork here in the chamber area and part of this barrel channel, and then on the underside of the handguard. So I have a surface where my barrel is down on something that's soft, compressible, a little bit flexible, and then when I put the handguard on, clamp it down and hold it. I'm not going to bed the whole handguard, maybe just the upward section a bit, So basically what I'm going to do is try to lock this in, get this into something where it's on a cushioned, and get a little pressure up underneath there, and then put a little bit of pressure up where the barrel band is here and try to stabilize this. So lock the receiver in and get the barrel to where it doesn't move around inside the stock. It's actually held tight 3/4 of the way up. And I'm going to see what that does and affects the accuracy. So the first step is the shimming process. I'm going to make a thing on action shims, and then barrel bedding. So that's what we're going to try to do. See if this makes a difference or a change. It's all experimental. It's all simple. I don't know if it'll make a difference. It might make the gun shoot worse. It might be a bad idea. It's just an idea. I'm going to try it. Try to keep it simple. See if it has an effect. It's kind of an experiment. Okay, that's it for the design problem video.